when Elon Musk's numbers really begin to impact Trump and Republicans, maybe closer to the midterms, then I think you could see a distancing, but I think it would come from Republicans and Trump kind of gently pushing him out.
So, Joe, last night, President Trump and President Putin had a phone call to discuss the details of a ceasefire in Ukraine, in which Vladimir Putin agreed to a limited ceasefire that would stop the strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, but he declined to agree to a broader 30-day ceasefire. But this morning, Russia bombed Ukraine's energy grid. Do you think that Trump is being played here by Putin?
Well, that's an interesting question. Is Trump being played by Putin? No, I think Trump's doing Putin's work for him. I think Trump's negotiating on behalf of Putin. I think we've always gotten this wrong. I understand that Trump is an idiot and he doesn't really know what he's doing. And people who flatter him, that's really all you have to do with him. But we've misunderstood from the beginning this relationship with Putin. He likes Putin. He stands with Putin. I think he works for Putin. I think he's a Russian asset. So when you look at it in that regard, it all makes perfect sense. He pressures Ukraine. He wants Ukraine to do all these things. He's got a demand list for Ukraine. But for Putin and Russia, really nothing. And so I don't think he's being played. I think Trump's doing what Putin wants him to do because I think that's what Trump wants to have happen as well.
I mean, Trump would obviously say he's not a Russian asset. Why do you think that he is one?
Everything. I mean, everything Donald Trump has said and done from the moment, and I'll just go back that far, from the moment he came down that escalator in 2015 and announced his run for president. Everything he's said and done since then, vis-a-vis Russia or the world, has been to Putin's benefit. Period. If he's not a Russian asset, the best you could say is he's Putin's puppet. Like he just wants to please Putin. I think it's worse than that. I think Trump has a history of business dealings in Russia going way back. I think Russian oligarchs were the only ones to lend him money way back. I don't know in particular, but if he's not a Russian asset, he's been acting like one for at least 10 years.
Many of the Kremlinologists that we speak to on Times Radio, they'll say that Putin's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here for a ceasefire deal. Because on the one hand, he's got this extraordinary change in relations with the White House. He's now actually having phone calls with the president of the United States. But at the same time, he needs the war in Ukraine to maintain his dictatorship, to distract Russians from what's going on in Russia, from him being in power for so long. If Putin keeps kind of defying Trump on this ceasefire deal, and if he just doesn't agree to it, do we think we could see Trump flip and, become frustrated by that and maybe change his, become less friendly with the Kremlin?
No, I don't see how that's possible. You can't imagine, and I can't imagine, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance as well, ever having Vladimir Putin in the Oval Office like they did Zelensky a few weeks back and doing to Putin what they did to Zelensky. Trump will never do that. I don't know how this will end, but it's clear that in this fight between an aggressor who invaded a sovereign nation 3 years ago, and that sovereign nation and NATO and the free world, the alliance that has helped Ukraine, it's clear that with Trump in the White House, America stands with Putin. I think you don't need to go down the Russian asset road with me if you don't want. But right now in this fight, America, for the first time in a long time, does not stand with the free world. Trump stands with Putin. And I think Europe and the alliance, NATO, everybody needs to firmly understand that. So how will it end? I think I don't, because Trump stands with Putin. Uh, I don't see that dynamic changing. He'll never stand with Ukraine. So he's going to continue to pressure and push Putin's stance view on this to try to get an end to the war.
What do you think that means for Marco Rubio um, and his position? We saw the extraordinary details of the cabinet meeting revealed in the New York Times, where Trump actually kind of appeared to side with Marco Rubio instead of Elon Musk. It Do you think do you think that Marco Rubio is, it's only a matter of time until he leaves, or do you think that that moment signals kind of a strengthening of his position?
Of everybody working for Trump right now, Rubio is the closest thing to this is ridiculous. Russia is bad. Putin is bad. We need to defend Ukraine. That's where Rubio has always been. But like so many others, when you decide to work for Trump, work with Trump, you sell your soul. You reach inside you, you pull out all your beliefs and you put them up on the shelf over there. That's what Rubio's done. I have no doubt that personally and privately, Rubio knows what Trump is doing is wrong. All you have to do is look at Rubio's record from a few years back. But I expect Rubio to be a good soldier because Rubio wants to remain an influential, viable Republican. It's not just Trump. This pro authoritarian, pro Putin virus has overtaken my former political party. Rubio wants to stay a player in that party.
I also wanted to ask you about the relationship between Elon Musk and Trump and how long you think that's going to last. Because we've seen the Tesla stocks are plunging. The work that Elon Musk is doing with Doge has been, just completely laden with lawsuits. It doesn't feel like, I mean, he has power, but in terms of his net worth and his personal approval ratings and stuff, it doesn't feel like it's really working out that well for Elon Musk. Do you think we could see him jump ship anytime soon?
I think it would be more likely that Trump would push him out sooner than people think. I do expect the relationship to last longer than people think because I think both men are personally benefiting from it, Tesla stock aside. Um, the polling across the board shows that Elon Musk's numbers have been tanking for a while. Trump's numbers are holding firm, and the Democrats' numbers are in the toilet. So when Elon Musk's numbers really begin to impact Trump and Republicans, maybe closer to the midterms, then I think you could see a distancing, but I think it would come from Republicans and Trump kind of gently pushing him out.
It's interesting that Trump's numbers have broadly kind of stayed the same, that they've actually been relatively favorable despite everything that we've been seeing. Why do you think that is, and when do you think we might start to see somewhat of a shift?
Again, my personal feelings about Trump aside, I think generally a lot of people who voted for him, it's only been 8 weeks, and you hear over and over, let's give him a little bit of time. He's trying to do some fairly dramatic things. Let's see how this plays out. So I think there's an enormous patience out there among a lot of people. Let's see how this works out. That will change when they feel pain, period. A lot of people voted for Trump because the Democrats suck, because of the border, because of whatever. Not everybody is a Trump cultist. There are plenty of those. But once those people who voted for Trump, who don't necessarily like Trump, but the Democrats suck, once they feel pain, they lose a job, they feel their benefits getting hurt, whatever the case may be, that's when they will turn on him.
I have somewhat of kind of like a big question, but we're seeing a lot of legal scholars are saying that we're not just at risk of a constitutional crisis in the US. It's now a question of how much damage it will have. Um, but I think there's still a question of, how much damage could, there's all this talk of a constitutional crisis and everything, but is that actually going to be damaging to the Trump administration at all?
Oh, that's interesting. Damaging to the Trump administration. I don't know about that. Damaging to the country, clearly.
Yeah.
And we're in a constitutional crisis. And I said that pretty early, mainly because the branch of government that I used to work for, the legislative branch, no longer exists. Our founders gave us three independent branches of government. Congress, ruled by Republicans, they've basically said, screw the Constitution. We are going to be the personal advisor of the executive branch. So right now, we only have two independent branches of government. We need to hope that the judicial branch, the courts, hold. Trump's already defied a court ruling. I think that will continue. So I think it's already done great damage to this country. And I don't know how the country recovers from what Trump's done. But as far as impacting Trump himself, color me crazy, but the guy tried to overthrow an American election 4 years ago, and it didn't hurt him politically. So,
And I mean, and we're seeing, you talk about the legislative branch, and we're just not, the Democrats are not being a proper opposition in Congress. I mean, Chuck Schumer voted alongside Republicans on the budget, avoiding a government shutdown. So the GOP is in charge of at least two of the branches of government. I mean, but why do you think that Chuck Schumer did that? Why wouldn't he just, hold out and try and do some kind of a negotiation?
because he's a stupid old fart who still thinks it's like 1992, and he's dealing with that Republican Party when, like, a guy named Bob Dole, remember Bob Dole was the Republican leader back in the early 90s. He doesn't recognize this moment. This is not that Republican Party. This is a radicalized Republican Party that no longer believes in the rule of law or democracy. So Schumer, I would argue, most Democrats simply don't recognize this moment. They don't recognize the threat that Trump and my former party are, which is why they don't fight. The party's in real trouble, the Democratic Party is, because in essence, they're not an opposition party right now. So and Trump takes advantage of that. As bad as Trump is, you asked me a while ago why his numbers haven't taken a hit. Look at the alternative. He's benefiting from that as well. So it's kind of like the same dynamic that I heard in the campaign when I was out there campaigning for Harris. Voters would tell me, Joe, I know Trump sucks, but man, the Democrats are clueless and they look down on me and blah, blah, blah. We're kind of still living in that dynamic. Trump's doing some crazy stuff. I don't like a lot of what he's doing, but those Democrats? So Trump benefits from that.
Well, and polling has seen that, Americans see AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as the next leader of the Democratic Party. But, she is, very progressive, very much on the left of the party. Do you think that Democrats should be listening to that, or do you think that's actually music to MAGA's ears?
Music to MAGA's ears. Look, I'm a populist. I'm a fighter. I'm all about Democrats need fighters. AOC is a fighter. But most of America is not where the MAGA right is, and most of America is not where the AOC progressives are. You got Bernie Sanders out there, God bless him, right? Raising hell. Most of America is not there. What Democrats need is a more moderate centrist fighter, Most Americans are still here, but they've got to figure that out. But to your point, most of the Democrats' fighters right now are on the far left. That's tough.
And I mean, the Democrats are really scrambling. And I think just finally, if we're looking ahead to the midterms or even to the next general election, because the way the campaigns work in the US, if you finish one, then you're on the next one. Um, I mean, what are the lessons that the Democrats need to be learning right now?
Such a great question. I wrote an article that came out a week before the election, and I said the worst thing about Kamala Harris winning is that the Democrats would not address their fundamental problem. Like Democrats, before November, Democrats have been able to live in this world where all they've had to say is Trump is batshit crazy. We're not Trump. Vote for us. And generally that succeeded because Trump was so bad. We don't live in that world anymore now. There are enough Americans now who will vote for Trump and Trumpism, knowing it's bad if the Democrats don't present voters with something. Democrats have completely lost touch with regular people. They've become elitist and snobs, and they've pushed issues that regular Americans who are just living paycheck to paycheck could give a damn about. That's the Democrats' big problem. Trump's a demagogue, and he lies to regular working class people, but Democrats ignore regular working class people. Until Democrats can figure out how to connect with regular folks again, they're going to be running behind, even to bad people like Trump and J.D. Vance, whoever might replace Trump.